Hello, welcome to Anita the Pedagogue channel. Today we want to continue with our grammar lessons. We want to look at the independent clause. Let's begin. So for our objectives, we are going to look at the definition of a clause. We'll look at what it entails, what should qualify as a clause. We'll define the independent clause, which is our main focus, and how to identify the independent clause. Let's move on to what a clause is. Now, a clause is a group of words that has a verb and a subject. Thus, there will be no clause if the sequence of words do not have a subject and a verb. Also, note that there are two types of clauses. That is the independent clause and the dependent, also sometimes called the subordinate clause. Let's look at some examples and why these are clauses. Linda went to the hospital yesterday. Does this have a verb and a subject? Well, the verb here is went, that is the action. And what is performing the action is the subject. Who is performing the action went? Linda. Linda is the subject, so we have a clause here. Our second example. The rich man was kind even though he lost his property. Do we have some verbs and subjects here? Let's look them out. So we have one verb here, was, and another verb, lost. Can we find the subjects of these verbs? So, the subject of the verb was is the rich man. The rich man is in that state of kind. And for the subject of lost is he. He is performing the action lost. Let's move on to our next example. Nathan ate hurriedly. Can you identify the verb here? Yes, ate. And who is performing this action? The subject? Nathan. Good. Now let's take a look at some other expressions and see what they are. As soon as possible. Can you find any verb here? No, no subject. Okay, the young beautiful princesses here. Again, no verb, no subject. Because of the golden ring. No verb, no subject. So these are not clauses, and it is because they do not have a verb and a subject. So we have that clear. Now let's proceed and look at what the independent clause is. So an independent clause is a clause that occurs alone in a sentence. In a sentence which is made up of several clauses, the independent clause is actually a clause that can be separated and still give a complete meaning or thought. Now the key here is that it should give a complete meaning or thought. Let's take a look at some examples. The ministers rioted. We have a verb here, rioted, and a subject here, the ministers. And does this give a complete thought? Yes, the ministers rioted. Our next example, I cut the birthday cake. We have a verb here, cut, the action, and the subject I performing it, cut the cake. Does this give a complete thought? Yes, I cut the birthday cake. I've given a complete information. So let us take note that the ministers rioted, I cut the birthday cake. These are independent clauses. Now note that these sentences can stand on their own and give a complete meaning. They do not depend on any other clause, phrase, or words to give a complete meaning. So these clauses are acceptable as complete statements. Let's proceed and look at really how to identify the independent clause. What to know in identifying an independent clause. Now note that they have a subject, that is, they tell you what the sentence is about. They have an action, a verb, or predicate. The verb and stating something about the subject. That is what will help you to have a complete meaning. They tell the reader what the subject is doing, and they express a complete thought. That is, they give enough information. Now, the independent clause can be as simple as a subject and a verb. And let's take an example. Just very simple. It can just be a subject and a verb. Felicia cried. And this is an independent clause because it gives you a complete information. You have the verb cried, that is the action, and the subject Felicia performing the action cried. Let's move on and take some examples of independent clauses. The bus was late. The bus is the subject, late is the action or verb. And it expresses a complete thought. It gives the information about the bus. The bus. So let's take a look at our next example. The pedestrians walked on the pavement. The pedestrians is the subject. Walked is the action or verb. And again, a complete thought is expressed because complete information is given. The pedestrians walked and on the pavement. So this gives a complete information. We look at our next example. She arrived at the station. She is the subject, arrived is the action or verb, and it gives a complete thought because she arrived at the station. Complete information is given here on her activity. Now this brings us to the end of our lesson on independent clauses. I hope this lesson was useful to you. Please put in your comments and questions and I'll respond to them. Do like, share and subscribe to this channel. Until I come your way again, keep learning and be the best version of yourself.